to the Morning Brief with Jimmy Song and Tone Ways. My name is Valentin Schmidt and I'll be the host for you today. And we've got a couple of exciting stories. We're going to start off with a bit of a technical detail that Jimmy is very excited about. And he says Trezor is now implementing the full SegWit, which is called BECH 41, back
32,
41,
back 32, back 32.
39, 41, 32. But why don't you tell us why this is exciting for people?
Yeah, so up until now, most SegWit addresses have been wrapped in pay-to-script hash, and that takes up more space on the blockchain. By having native bech32 available with Trezor, that allows sort of like savings on the blockchain, and you can have even smaller transactions than you did before with the same amount of security. And Trezor, to my knowledge, is sort of the first, at least hardware wallet, might be just in general wallet that's supporting bech32 addresses. I think a lot of people like me are hoping that bech32 addresses become the standard. They're a lot easier to read. They're a lot easier to type, a lot harder to make mistakes on. It's also better for the blockchain because you're using less space, so it should be a little bit cheaper. It's rolled into a lot of other fixes as part of Trezor. They're supporting a bunch more currencies and stuff like that, which may or may not be interesting to you. But as far as I'm concerned, the big improvement in this firmware upgrade is the bech32 addresses, which I'm hoping more companies and wallets start using.
So we passed it over to Tone Bays, who's in a tropical resort, and said he wanted to give us a little view of the scenery rather than himself. That's why he's a bit dark. Tone, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, this is great. I mean, these are some of the technical details that I am not, I'm not an expert in. Right? And it's amazing how people make fun of me when I say I'm not an expert at the technicals of SegWit. I just know that it's good because a bunch of, smarter people than me have designed it technically. And it's amazing how people still make fun of me when I made this clear in my debate with Roger about a year ago, where I said I will hand off the design of a nuclear power plant to the nuclear engineers and not a bunch of people on Reddit or not the first person to discover uranium, right? And this is the point, right? So I fully converted to SegWit addresses. It took me a little while. It took me about a month. And I am now fully using green address for my cell phone as my, all incoming transactions. I then go to save them on Trezor and Ledger, which are SegWit compatible. I personally had no idea that there were, a more optimal version of SegWit addresses versus just SegWit addresses. And the wallet companies really get on the ball here. They really need to get on this, okay? Because they're the same ones that have been complaining for big blocks, yet they're not doing anything to clear up the mempool now because the safer, more advanced technological solution is sitting there in front of them. So it's great that Trezor is starting to do it. I don't know if Green Address does it or not. If they don't, Larry, you got to get on that. Larry Bitcoin, get on that, all right? And we need to really clean up this mempool because it's at this point, the barrier is not technological. The barrier is human at this point. And that's what still bothers me.
So interesting. I remember your point from the debate with Roger Ver, where you said you would trust a nuclear engineers to build a nuclear reactor. And in a way, this is like a small trust factor left in Bitcoin and crypto, that you do have to trust the programmers to do a good job. However, at least unlike the plans of a nuclear power plant, which you and I cannot look into, neither in theory or in practice, the source code for Bitcoin is open source. So if you wanted to learn it, you would be free to do it and look into it. And with respect to the mempool, we are still looking for all the addresses to activate SegWit and at least max out the current technology. Now, next story is very interesting. So according to Reuters, they have a scoop on Tezos, the until now biggest ICO, I think 232 million. And they say a board member resigned, whose name is Guido Schmitz-Krummacher, a Swiss legal and management expert. And from the article, go check it out on Reuters. It's fantastic. They say the punchline is the project has been embroiled in a battle over control between its founders. Now, I thought all these ICOs were about decentralization. So why do we have this battle of control, Jimmy?
Well, I mean, they're clearly centralized, so I don't know if decentralization is really what they were going for. It seems more like marketing speak to me, and they just like having that label. This one's very interesting to me because they've been embroiled in this sort of fight for a while now, and now like one of their board members resigns, and now they're sort of fighting against each other. It's. I like a lot of these ICOs, you put money in, you have no idea what's going to happen with your money. This is a very typical case in that regard. You really don't know what the governance is going to be like. They can say that it's decentralized. They can say that it's up to the community. They can say whatever. But in the end, it's whatever they say it is, and they get to decide. You don't really have much rights as a Tezos token holder to determine their board or anything. You just sort of have to sit there and wait for this stuff to resolve.
So at the end, this is just a normal company which raised money through a different way of raising money. Tone, your thoughts?
So my thoughts are more general, right? Like, for some reason, people think that Tezos is an exception. And for some reason, people think that the DAO was an exception. No. That's the norm. That's the norm. When this shit actually works out, for let's say 6 months or so, that's the exception. Like Ethereum actually launching, like the difference between Ethereum and Tezos is so freaking small. Like, people don't realize how small it is. Like Ethereum came within literally a week of being Tezos, right? They almost didn't launch. Their whole team also broke up. There were 8 founders of Ethereum. 7 of them were gone before the launch of Ethereum. Okay, like people think that everything is going to work out like Ethereum. Everything is supposed to work out like Tezos. All right, like I have the full like legal class action lawsuit in my email box. The class action lawyer even sent it to me, like the official statements and stuff. I just haven't had the time to read through them because I really don't care. I mean, this is how this shit is supposed to work out. I mean, these guys know absolutely nothing. The whole point is to just get your money. None of these projects are going to work. The best thing Tezos was ever going to accomplish was to pump out ICOs on top of it instead of having ICOs pump out on top of Ethereum. All of these are outright scams, in my opinion. And the SEC, if it doesn't go after them, I mean, look, that's fine. I mean, if you put your money in Tezos, you deserve to lose all your money. And I so wish Ethereum actually ended like Tezos, like it was supposed to. Would have made everybody's life so much better right now, in my opinion. At least mine.
Well, Tone did make a full episode on why Ethereum is a scam on the Crypto Scam podcast. So if you don't have that back knowledge, do check it out.
I still gotta do 3 more episodes on that. Jesus, I gotta get on that.
So talking about the SEC is interesting because they scared everybody when they came out in the summer and said ICOs are securities. And that brings us to our next story. And they said ICOs should comply with the prevalent regulations for securities issuance. And nobody basically believed they would do anything about it. And being regulators, they obviously took their sweet time. But now they actually have sent a cease and desist order to the Munchie ICO on December 11, basically shutting it down. Jimmy.
Jimmy, please tell us what the Munchie ICO is. Right? Look, no offense, right? I have so many friends in this space, but you know what? Until the SEC goes after something like Civic or Veritasium or Ethereum or EOS, something with like a prominent Bitcoiners, something until the SEC goes after like a real ICO, none of this is going to make any difference.
Well, I mean, they did raise 15 million. The big thing that I noticed about this ruling was that they applied the Howey test. specifically to this this ICO, and that was how they decided that the Munchie ICO was illegitimate. So
and the Howey test for our viewers is a test how to determine whether something is a security raising.
Yeah, and the fact that they applied it, and if this is sort of the enforcement going forward, I think a lot of ICOs that have happened, I mean, they're probably scrambling and talking to their lawyers right now after this, saying, okay, are we okay on the Howey test? Because that pretty much gives you a bright red line on whether or not you're going to get prosecuted by the SEC. I mean, I don't know what Munchie did actually, but they did raise $15 million. And the big thing, the real reason it looks like they got prosecuted by the SEC was because reason number 4 was, as more users get on the platform, the more valuable your MUN tokens will become, and watch their value increase over time, etc., etc. Basically, I think I've seen those kinds of claims from pretty much every ICO I've ever seen, either implied or explicit, like they did. So if that's the test, wow, I mean, how many ICOs are going to be left? I mean, I think the SEC can take down like a whole swath of ICOs. It looks kind of bad to me.
Well, no, Jimmy, they can take them all down. It's amazing how, and I pointed this out with the DAO, it's amazing how all of these terms of service for all of these ICOs specifically state in their ICOs, this is not a security, you have no expectation of profit. But those are just statements on a piece of paper. No one cares what these guys say. I remember making fun of the DAO when in published articles, I still have those. I mean, it's hard for me to find the tweets, but I still have the graphics that I used to do. I'm like, it clearly states in the DAO's terms of service, this is not a venture capital fund. Investing in the DAO token does not guarantee, that does not mean you're investing in a venture capital fund. And then like a year later, the SEC releases a statement on it, and they say, in the footnote, it says, the DAO was a venture capital fund. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I said a year ago. Like, it's amazing how these guys think they can like get around this thing just by saying a statement, right? It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, it's their lawyers.
Hey, Jimmy, what are you doing? Are you clipping your fingernails?
Yeah, a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was.
We were really good with like the mute button back on Google Hangouts. I'm starting to use it on Zoom. It does exist.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize that was audible because I'm wearing these things. My bad. Yeah, I won't do it.
You have a fantastic microphone, Jimmy. Don't underestimate it. Okay, great. So some entertainment, some comic relief here on the morning brief by Jimmy's song.
Well, I think the fact that this story says the final nail kind of like triggered my thought on that.
Like, yeah, I can save some time. Fantastic. I don't care what Toad has to say anyway. So, but Toad, to your point, the SEC cut down all the ICOs. However, notoriously, the SEC doesn't have the resources. They don't have the resources to even go after the financial scammers in the banking system and the stock market.
No, I agree. I completely agree. The SEC goes after the low-hanging fruit, which is very, very frustrating, right? Because, look, I hated Satoshi Dice as much as the next guy. And, like, it kind of sucked that, what's his name? Eric Worke got busted for not filling out the right paperwork, even though as spammy as Satoshi Dice was, it didn't actually scam anyone, which is not what I say about the SEC. But it's a lot harder to go after these ICOs because they require significant resources. And eventually the crowd with the pitchforks, when Ethereum implodes and every ICO just goes down, everyone and their mother is gonna go screaming at the SEC, why didn't they do something?
So we would, I guess it's fair to say that Tone would like the SEC to hire a few people for their cryptocurrency division?
In a way, I kind of don't, because those idiots will probably go after guys like me with Bitcoin instead of the actual people that are scamming.
Okay, so let's move to a more positive topic, which is eBay. And a certain Scott Cutler, senior vice president of eBay Americas, he said, he told Yahoo Finance that eBay is seriously considering accepting Bitcoin, which puts them at a huge advantage over any bank or other financial institutions, which can't just buy it, but eBay, like Overstock, can just accept Bitcoin and hold it and become richer than anybody else.
Yeah, I half suspect that this is a way to boost their stock price. I think they watched Square and watched them, mention Bitcoin, and they saw that Square stock price went up on that news, and they're just sort of putting this out as a feeler to see if people will respond to that and cause their stock price to go up. Part of me thinks this is like a really, really big long shot. They're not a really well done technological company. Their website still looks like it's from 1998. Like they haven't innovated very much. They still charge sellers like really ridiculous fees. I used to sell on eBay, back when it was like 7 or 8% total that they would take from me. But then like it eventually got to like 10, 11, 12%. And just completely destroyed my profit margin on whatever I was selling. So at this point, I think they're just hoping that the market will respond by buying up more eBay stock and cause their stock price to go up, and then maybe they consider it. I just don't think that they have sort of the company culture necessary in order to be able to pull something like this off.
So Jimmy thinks it's more like a marketing scheme. What about you, Tone?
Tone?
Oh, mute button. I kind of agree. It is a bit of a boost, but in reality, I mean, eBay was pretty innovative back in 1997, 98 when they made their website. I mean, I made sure that my website looks older than that.
You did succeed.
but it's also the right thing to do, right? I mean, they can pass the Bitcoin almost directly to the seller. They can cut down on some of their fees. They can be a little more hip. They can get ahead of some of the other, eBay. I mean, I'm happy this is happening because it will remove, so many projects that are like eBay but with the Bitcoin, right? And more like eBay but with our own money, not even Bitcoin, right? So this is of course a good thing. Now, the one thing I would caution on is, I was a vice president at JP Morgan and a few other companies. So senior vice president, unless it's a managing director or an executive director, I tend not to take any public comment seriously. I mean, I was a VP at JP Morgan. If I would have said anything publicly, I would have been fired. Like, that's just like, you're not high enough on a scale as a VP to be making public statements that go to articles.
Okay,
so,
right. To be fair, you were at a bank.
Exactly.
And banks have like 18 levels of vice presidents. Yeah. This is eBay. They're a little bit different.
That's true. They're probably a little bit different, but I don't know. I like seeing public statements come from managing directors and executive directors, right?
I don't think normal corporates have managing directors either.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess I come from a different corporate world. So I guess this is good. Just one little point. But let's move on to the next story. I think I'm going to like the next one.
Yeah, the next one is amazing. Kudos to the New York Times. I never thought I would say that. And to Kevin Rose, who published an article, I was wrong about Bitcoin, and here's why. He could have tweaked the headline a bit, why I was wrong about Bitcoin, little tip, but kudos to you. So he basically thought all the stereotypes. I assumed Bitcoin's future depended on its everyday use as a medium of exchange. He says, not so. I assumed the blockchain would eclipse Bitcoin itself. So blockchain, yeah, good, Bitcoin, bad. I assumed regulators would crack it down. And what's the last point? I would assume Wall Street would stay away. And basically, all of this was wrong, and he admits it. oh, here I assume Bitcoin's volatility would be a turnoff. So basically all of them wrong, and he admits it. And well, Tone, why, if you're so excited, why don't you go ahead?
Well, actually, I thought the gold story was next. I got them a little backwards. Oh. This one, actually, I mean, I expect a lot more of these, right? A lot more of these people are going to eventually change their mind, you know, from Jamie Dimon to Warren Buffett to all the other big guys that just don't understand it yet. Bitcoin is going to be with us forever, you know, not the Chinese knockoffs of Bitcoin, but actual Bitcoin. I'm not actually expecting that to... I'm not actually expecting that to go away.
Okay, what about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I expect the same thing. There's like a whole site, 99 Bitcoins, where they list all the people that say Bitcoin is dead, or Bitcoin is terrible, or Bitcoin is X, Y, or Z, X, Y, or Z being something negative. I thought he was very honest, and I appreciated the fact that, you know, he was wrong on a lot of these assumptions, right? It's not a medium of exchange for most people. It's not, you know, blockchain isn't more valuable than Bitcoin. Regulators care, but they're not going to necessarily crack down because there are a lot of other uses than, you know, darknet markets. And Wall Street's definitely coming, especially because of the volatility. I mean, both of you guys know that, you know, volatility and VIX chasing and you know, having high beta is actually good for certain categories of investments. So you know, I thought it was a really well done article, and I like Tone. I expect a lot more of these going forward.
Okay, so now we have the story that Tone is excited about, and which I also think is very interesting. So that was a story posted on Zero Hedge. Is Bitcoin really stealing demand for gold? And of course, Goldman Sachs has to answer that question. And their take was no, but this gets into so many different layers. First of all, how is it not possible that Bitcoin takes demand from gold when both are traded now on the futures market? So investors can easily choose, I buy Bitcoin or buy gold. And we see this divergence here. If you pull up the chart, Jimmy, right, the top one, right, going into the futures trading, where Bitcoin just steams ahead and gold goes down. And the point that Goldman makes is more, with the gold products, you already have all the regulations, so it's easier for institutional investors to buy. And as a side point, even if you buy gold with cash, they point that out, it's basically completely regulated, and the IRS will know about it, large amounts, as with anything else, which doesn't put Bitcoin as a disadvantage. So, Tom, why don't you tell us what's true about this Bitcoin?
Yeah, can you leave that chart up? So here's my problem with Zero Hedge, right? I used to like Zero Hedge, and then like look at this chart, right? Like Zero Hedge makes it look like this is like a multi-year trend, when in reality it's just 5 days, right? It's like they make these like correlations. It's like, oh my God, this thing has been trading in tandem for 3 days, and now they're in opposite direction. This means that it's like this for years to come. This is my problem with Zero Hedge. They make like the biggest mountains out of like the tiniest molehills. So in reality, this chart is nothing. It's just, you know, one day that Bitcoin happens to go up, and the one day that gold happens to go down, and it happens to go for like 3 days in a row. Okay, not a big deal at all. And but in reality, of course it does. I mean, Bitcoin has been stealing the luster from gold for a while. And just look no further than yourself. Everyone the thousands of people that are watching these videos, you would all be gold bugs right now, pretty much, right? Like I used to be a gold bug. I haven't bought a single ounce of gold and silver in about 3 to 4 years. Even like my gold dealer that I used to buy all my gold and silver from, I mean, he's already like into Bitcoin, thinking of what he can do in the Bitcoin space, right? It's happening because I used to make fun of the people that thought gold was a relic, like some of the other economists and stuff talking about it like 5 or 6 years ago. But now it's really, really true. In this world of like the digital age, gold, we were never going back to the gold standard. I'm sorry, guys. And Bitcoin needs to keep doing what it's doing. And yeah, gold is going to become more and more irrelevant, which I don't really have a problem with. I mean, I'm fully invested in Bitcoin. I would like to see one more gold pop. I would like to sell all my gold at a profit, because at the moment I'm still sitting at a loss.
And we have seen those stories, A, where the business of gold dealers has gone down and they cite Bitcoin, and B, some of them are accepting Bitcoin. And I think what Tone said is really probably true for a lot of people, that the original gold bugs are at least interested in crypto and also own some Bitcoin on top of their gold.
And here's the reality of the situation, right? Like, I think I started buying a bunch of gold in like 2012 or something like that, like after the bubble, right? I don't think I had any before the gold bubble of 2011, gold and silver of 2011. But I think I started buying in like 2012, 2013, when I started getting into this kind of libertarian space. I think I started buying silver at like $33, $35 an ounce. And I think I started buying gold at like $1,400 or $1,500 an ounce.
When did you stop buying?
I stopped buying the moment I bought my first Satoshi, pretty much. That's what so in like so mid to late 2013, I kind of stopped buying gold and silver. But the reality is, right, it's not that I'm only down $120 in gold, right? So if I bought, let's say my average buying in gold is $1,350, right? Right now, gold is below $1,300. I have to compare that to the S&P 500. It's not gold versus gold, right? If gold goes back to $1,500, yeah, so what? So I made like 5 or 10% on my gold. How much did I lose by not having that money in the S&P 500?
No, how much money did you lose by not having that money in Bitcoin? Bitcoin is your standard, man.
No. In this case, the S&P 500 is the standard, because you got to compare crazy to reality, not the crazy of gold bugs to the reality of the stock market, not the crazy of gold bugs to the opposite, crazy of our Bitcoiners, right? Because that is way too speculative, and the S&P is not speculative at all. So I would compare my gold to the S&P 500, and there is a high probability my gold buying will never, ever, ever be sold at a profit versus the S&P 500. And that should tell the gold bug something.
So, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that that gold does have some value, obviously, but Bitcoin's what people are using more as a store of value, and that's why I was comparing the two, because I know a lot of people that started selling their gold and silver stashes for Bitcoin, like right around 2014, 2015, and stuff like that, and
pretty smart.
Yeah, I mean, they're moving it because they're saying, well, I could store it in this, or I could store it in this other thing. And obviously, Bitcoin's been a much, much better store of value. It's been going up, and there's more adoption and things like that. And certainly for people under, like, say, 40, most of them are thinking, hey, you know what? Like, gold's like an old relic. Bitcoin is much better. And I imagine that's why a lot of these gold and silver dealers aren't getting as much business. I mean, if Bitcoin never was invented or released in 2009, I imagine many of us would be thinking, hey, let's buy gold, something that will store value, or put money in stocks or something like that. A lot of the money that's in Bitcoin right now obviously comes from those people. So not surprised at all. I expect this trend to continue.
Yes, definitely. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt that a lot of the demand from the sound money people has been channeled into Bitcoin rather than the precious metals. And I think this debate is interesting because there's a lot of black and white thinking where it doesn't have to be, where clearly gold and silver have a very long track record. Bitcoin does not. However, Bitcoin has some nice features that gold and silver don't have, and my personal opinion, at least, is black and white thinking usually doesn't advance you in investing. And very important point also from a regulatory point of view, that you suffer from the same or worse punishments in terms of tax, in terms of compliance, in terms of filing, if you buy gold with cash than if you buy Bitcoin through Coinbase. It's almost exactly the same thing. So last topic, we talked about regulation. I have another regulation, the South Koreans, where we had a lot of Bitcoin craziness. So the regulators, they have a sort of fear of missing out, maybe not on buying Bitcoin, but on regulating it. So they are going to meet this week, and they're going to talk about how they're going to regulate and tax it. Jimmy, you looked into this.
Yeah, a little bit. It looks like a lot of the companies that own shares of Bitsum, that's like the biggest Bitcoin exchange in Korea, those shares like fell during trading and things like that. But yeah, there was a rumor that they would completely ban cryptocurrencies. But this reporter, Joyce Kim, did find, Korean government will regulate Bitcoin exchanges but not ban them. They will have 6 reasonable requirements: KYC, AML, key storage, separation of fiat into third-party accounts, consumer warnings about trading, transparency of order books. So it's more or less good news. I think a lot of people were a little bit spooked yesterday night based on that. Might have had some effect on price. But yeah, it looks more or less over. They are going to regulate it. It's going to be legal. I don't think South Korean government is much like China in that regard. They'll just sort of make the decision once and let it be, instead of banning it and then banning it again and banning it again, which China tends to do.
Any thoughts on this, Tone?
Oh, I was going ahead. I was looking at the price of Bitcoin. Not really. I mean, this is going to happen with most. Is my audio coming in?
Yeah,
it is, right? Okay. This is going to happen with most of the countries, especially countries that are hot and that are getting global interest. Korea is going to be no different. I mean, Korea is fairly modern. They'll probably do the right thing.
So at this point in time, it's also interesting to note for not totalitarian countries like China, would a democracy, or quotation marks, or a sort of fairly free country like Japan or Korea or the United States get away with banning Bitcoin, destroying all the jobs, destroying all the innovation, criminalizing the people who hold it and pay their tax on it? To be honest, I think at this point there's going to be a fair bit of backlash from the population. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know.
I honestly, I'm different here, and I said this at a conference on stage. Like, I don't see that much innovation going on, right? I mean, Bitcoin was the innovation, and now it's whoever can make Bitcoin, better be used. And most of these projects are open source, and they don't need regulation, right? Like, Bitcoin itself does not. You can't regulate Bitcoin, right? Innovating in the world of Bitcoin is, creating Mimblewimble, giving us fungibility, giving us scaling. Innovation in Bitcoin does, can spit on regulation. It doesn't exist, okay? What needs and begs for regulation is things like ICOs, because that hammer can come down. And a lot of people tell me that, oh, it's all innovation. I haven't seen any innovation in the ICO space other than a way to get around regulation to issue securities. And that's not going to fly, right? And that's not even innovation. Like Ethereum is not, I don't see any innovation in Ethereum. Bitcoin is the innovation. So I don't really buy those statements. I mean, yeah, it'll be harder to use Bitcoin if Bitcoin's illegal, just like it's harder to use drugs when drugs are illegal. But it'll get around it, and sooner or later, Bitcoin will have to be accepted in a society.
Jimmy, do you have any concluding thoughts on this, other than that we let Tone get to the price?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable that you're gonna see stuff like that. These regulations. As far as what Tone said about innovation, yeah, I agree. Most of the innovation is taking place on the open source side and not like at companies for the most part, which is a little bit sad, because most of the companies are in it to sort of you know, make money off of, you know, a lot of the hard work that a lot of other people have done. But that's okay. We need them too. So, yeah, I'd like to see more different, interesting stuff, and I'm starting to write a talk around that very topic. Like, here's some free ideas for you guys. Please, somebody go make these. So, yeah, I'll try to speak about that in London when I'm there.
Okay, Tone, what about the price? You have to unmute yourself.
Tone, price.
Yep. Going to screen share now. Let's take a look. All right, as usual, those of you that are interested in trading, please check out my Learn Trading section. If you see some kind of random numbers, you may want to read section 6 in detail. Oh man, I'm just constantly answering those questions. All right, so taking a look at the weekly price, the weekly candles this week, right now at the all-time highs, are giving you a brand new entry. Those that decided to take some profit and reasonably taking some profit, you know, between somewhere around this red arrow. Right now, my weekly chart is pointing to, you know, higher highs coming in. Still a little nervous about what's going to happen on Monday once the CME futures launch. But hey, technicals are technicals, right? Technicals are telling me that now that this candle with a 2 on top is trading above a candle with a 1 on top, we should be going higher and potentially for, you know, 7 more weeks of upside, 6.5, 7 more weeks of upside. The daily chart has given us a bit of a pause. I mean, last night when I was going to bed, we were way lower. We were down near the bottom of the candle here. And again, this is one of those situations where one of my rules that if you have a daily double top that is somewhat spaced apart, it's an indication that we are going way higher because the market isn't accommodative enough to give you 2 perfect exits at the very high. And even though I had a 9 sell telling me to look for, you know, at least 1 to 4 day correction, I believe the no double top rule is stronger, where we should be seeing higher prices. So I'm not surprised we're taking a little bit of a break here because momentum can only go so far. So let's see what happens in the next couple of days. And then we'll go from there. Here's the 4-hour chart. I drew these arrows a little while ago. I had a little 9 on a 4-hour chart telling me that I should have a couple of candles of correction and then go higher. We are now starting to go higher. And according to this indicator, at least, this candle is about has 27 minutes to go. So if you're a shorter term trader, our entry would be above the current candle, right? So if the next candle starts trading above the prior candle, that becomes your bullish entry. And let's see how far it can take us. I really do think we can get into the, you know, $20,000 range in the beginning of the futures, and then we'll see what Wall Street does. The hourly chart doesn't seem to be very useful at the moment. And, you know, since a lot of people have been asking, you know, let's take a look at Litecoin. Maybe I'll take like 5 minutes or so. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So we're going to start from the long-term view. And here's the thing, right? Like, it's amazing. Like, every week I get accused of not pumping another altcoin that happens to pump, right? Like, I am supposed to sit there and watch each one of the 1,000 shitcoins and properly predict when each one is going to pump, okay? So let's take a look, okay? Can someone please, can a genius trader please tell me why on earth at this low point right here was Litecoin a buying opportunity, okay? It's like saying, oh my God, this stock has just crashed from $100 to $10, but that was a perfect buy, okay? So here's the weekly chart of Litecoin. It was completely collapsing. I had this arrow going down. This arrow was almost freaking reached. Litecoin had fallen from almost current levels. Litecoin fell from current levels at the end of August. Down, so Litecoin fell from, what do we got here? 0.018 to 0.07, right? So what percentage is that, right? So
60.
Yeah, about 60, 65%, right? So Litecoin fell 60 to 65%, and then a couple of weeks later, it gave, based on my indicators, it gave me a 9 buy. But this is the weekly chart, by the way. So we're looking at long-term view. So even after it bounced a little prematurely, I had no reason to buy Litecoin here, none. There was nothing here, even though my arrows worked out. The arrows are purely luck. There's nothing really. This is just me randomly drawing these things, right? So by the time this 9 came, if this 9 had come like down here, I might have said, hey, you know, you can kind of take a stab at a buying opportunity. This was already bounced. After this 9 buying opportunity came, I never even had a higher high. Never. I mean, barely, by like a penny, right? That's not how I trade, all right? And look at these numbers, right? They're flip-flopping back and forth with ones. Then you get another candle completely decimating Litecoin. Like, why on earth would there, I mean, I'm looking at the weekly chart. The weekly chart is still telling me that Litecoin is not a buy. Because again, 1, 1, 1, 1. I don't trade the ones unless they're coming off a perfect 9 at the very bottom, giving me other indications to buy. So I'm looking at the weekly chart right now, and I have absolutely no technical reasons to buy. Like, this is the kind of 9 I want to sell. So if you flip this upside down, right? If these two candles, if I guess I'm going a bit overboard here with Litecoin. I really didn't mean to talk this long about it, but basically, whoa, that's really, really bright. Hold on. Like, if these candles happened in reverse down here, let me copy this and paste it. Like if, whoa, that's the logarithmic scale doing its job here. Hold on. Oh, Jesus. I'm not sure what I'm drawing here at this point. And now I made it to, okay. So if those candles happened down here, I would say, okay, so maybe you buy off the 9. But that didn't happen. It reversed prematurely and then it collapsed. So the weekly chart is still not telling me that Litecoin is a safe buy. Let's go to the daily chart. Let's see if the chart has given us anything, okay? So again, the daily chart, if you saw this 9 over here in the very beginning of a candle.
This is the 4-hour chart, Tone.
Oh, this is the 4-hour chart. Oh, shoot. Okay, let's go to it's supposed to be the daily chart. I have it saved as a daily chart. Let's go to the daily chart, okay? So the daily chart, again, gave you an indication to sell, time it perfectly, you did well, you got flipped out of this trade, and then it got decimated. So again, we went like below all my metrics that normally cause it to go down to 0 and never come back. Like, there was nothing useful here. And then it reverses out of the blue, but like I must have said, because you see this orange line here, I must have said on some video, if we go above this orange line on a daily chart, Litecoin becomes a buy. So go back and find that video, probably on trading Bitcoin last week. Trading Bitcoin like last week, it would have been like 4 or 5 days ago. I would have said daily Litecoin is a buy above this orange line, okay? Let's go to the 4-hour. The 4-hour, okay, this is a nice 9 sell. This would have been a 9 buy in the very beginning of this candle. And again, you are looking at your buying opportunity based on a 4-hour chart. Those of you that trade like I trade would have been right here above this green line, which is near the orange line from the daily chart. So they would have came on the same 4-hour candle. You could take your profit right here. This would have been on the 12th. This would have been yesterday. And if I zoom in on the 4-hour chart, based on the way I like to trade these days, is the 2 never went above a 1, 3 never went above a 2. The 4 did kind of go above a 3, barely. So I guess your trade could have been entered right here. You know, that would have been your entry, your stop loss. Your stop loss on this particular trade would have been right below the entry candle right there. You are doing okay on your trade. You can probably raise your stop now to below the prior candle right there. And if the next candle starts trading higher than the current candle, you should have a lot more confidence in this Litecoin trade to the upside once you go above there. On the next candle in about 20 minutes, once you break above that high, you can have a little more confidence. You can raise your stop loss to above break even. But based on daily, sorry, that's weekly. Based on weekly, Litecoin is not even a buy yet. It's still in neutral territory. And based on daily, you could have, when the numbers come back here, 4 more days of upside? 4 more days of upside. That's all of that was, of course, versus Bitcoin versus the dollar. This is the 1 hour chart versus the dollar. Let's go to the daily versus the dollar. And versus the dollar. Yeah, versus the dollar, it's going up. I don't have my I don't have my indicators on it. I don't know. Let's do this one. 1 second. I'll be done in 30 seconds here. I know. I know. I'm getting it's not really a Litecoin show here, but everyone's been on my ass on Twitter over Litecoin. Yeah. So looking at the dollar is the same as versus Bitcoin, right? You have like 3 more days of. I mean, if I'm looking at the dollar, I'm looking at 3 more days of upside. Give me a 9, maybe at 350, maybe at 400, and then it becomes a selling opportunity then, or take profit opportunity, I should say. All right, so that's pretty much it for me. I guess we talk more about Litecoin today than Bitcoin. But hey, look, of all the coins I don't mind pumping, it really is Litecoin. But it's not a long-term, like I don't know. Like Overstock also pumped in the last 6 months. I don't think Overstock is going to take over Amazon, right? Like Amazon went up 10%. It went from $1,000 to $1,100 or $1,150, right? Overstock went from like $5 because the company was almost out of business to $25. But don't be screaming at me how Overstock is going to take over the world, right? I mean, that's the comparison, right? Like Litecoin to Bitcoin is literally Overstock to Amazon. I prefer to trade on Amazon because I don't know, because I'm pretty sure Jeff Bezos is not getting fired. I'm not so sure about Patrick Byrne.
Okay, let's wrap it up here. Thanks a lot, Tone, and over to you, Jimmy.
And my name is Jimmy Song, and this song is